Hi again, we're back with the series, part 21 of the series, What Makes Our Inner Work Work. And today we're talking about what is revealed in the silence and in bliss. And we're continuing to talk about the loving detective, the sacred scientist, and all their friends. So in the last part, I began explaining a little bit more about the traits of the sacred scientist or the loving detective, and what makes them so useful for us in a way when we manage to behave towards ourselves and to explore our own universes in such a way. And as we've done before, I want to suggest all sorts of questions to ask ourselves. So, for example, how well am I taking care of myself? Okay? And where am I not taking care of myself? Now, this is a very revealing question to ask because, sometimes people can live in a kind of imagined world where they're taking really good care of themselves, for example, because they eat well or because they do a lot of sport, for example. But at the same time, if they really ask themselves this question, they may find out that their inner kids, for example, are completely neglected, or that their love life or sexuality is completely neglected, or that they're neglecting their intellectual development. They never read a book, perhaps, or they never go to nature, or they never do just fun stuff, or really relax. Now, in order to really be well taken care of, and for our inner work to work, we have to have a certain amount of balance in our lives. Now, this will rarely be a perfect balance because, life is dynamic and sometimes we can do more of this and sometimes we do more of that. But the aim, from my perspective, should be exactly this: to have enough of all sorts of things. Our inner work won't work for long, even if we're very diligent, and even if I spend perhaps 2 hours a day even doing my inner work and I never have fun, I'll probably, crash into a wall at some point. Or if, I have fun and I do my inner work, but I really, really don't take care of my body, okay? Or if I have all of those, but I have no friends whatsoever. So this detective part of us can start looking at this and saying, well, where am I really neglecting my life and myself? Okay. So this is one thing to check. And I really urge you to do it, not only to listen to it and say, good idea, or I've heard about that before, or whatever your reaction may be, but to actually sit down as part of your inner work and think about it and write it down. And then when you discover those things that you don't do, for example, you never have fun, whether it's through playing with your dog or going to the beach or going to movies or listening to comedy shows or whatever, then, okay, what am I going to do about it? And then start implementing it. Even if it's just a little bit, it's so much better than nothing to begin with, okay? So that was one question for the inner detective to ask himself. Another good question to ask is, what am I not seeing? Now, this is tricky, of course, because how do I see what I don't see? No, you understand? It's we always have so many blind spots, and we really don't see them, you know. And as I think Jung said once, you know, what is in the unconscious is really unconscious. So, you know, who's going to see what isn't seen? But the thing is that as a sacred scientist, for example, or a loving detective, I'm starting to hone and to kind of develop my senses to sniff it out, to kind of say, I think there may be something there, even if I don't see it yet. Okay. And even the sniffing out of some kind of weird scent or something like that is a beginning. No, it starts rolling all sorts of of wheels, turning certain wheels, and things begin to move, and then perhaps I'll sniff it again, and then maybe if I'm awake enough, I'll catch it. I remember a few years ago, I taught a course in some place in the country, in the countryside. And I remember one day driving there and noticing that to my left, there was inside one of the gardens next to one of the houses in this place, there was this big, very big statue of a horse. And said, that's odd. You know, it's pretty big and I never noticed it before. You know, I went there quite a few times because this course was pretty long. And then I asked all the other people who all came through the same route, and did anybody see the statue of the horse? And nobody saw it. So again, it was just a funny way of noticing that there can be pretty prominent things in our field of vision which we just don't notice. And of course, there are things that we invent that aren't there, you know. But so what I suggest to all the sensitive spies out there is to start wondering about questions like, what am I not seeing? What is kind of in my blind spot? Why don't I look to this side or to that side? How come I never look up or down? You know, or these are only I forget the word, but images to help you. But it's really a kind of sensitivity that we develop. So I can imagine, for example, one of us perhaps does inner work through drawing, for example. So an interesting thing would be to do a drawing that begins with the idea of finding out something that is invisible to me. Okay, and see what happens. Or if you write, or if you know, do any other form of inner work, kind of give it that type of beginning, and start from there and see what happens. It can be some kind of intuitive writing, or just seeing, for example, deciding to do a session of voice dialogue with no plan apart from the plan to see something that was invisible before. Okay, could be pretty exciting to see what happens. Let's move to another thing that may be very useful to ask. And again, in a way, it's very, very, it's a very everyday kind of thing. And often we do notice this type of thing, but I'd like to remind of it once again. And that is the kind of scientific question, what triggers me? What makes me lose it? You know, what makes me suddenly become extremely angry or upset, or automatically feel abused or hurt, or things like that. And this is also extremely useful because very often when we're triggered, we're very righteous, and we feel that we've been wronged, or that our judgment is, of course, the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and that can be, true of in politics, and in the family life, or over dinner, or whatever. Okay, and if we actually use these occurrences, these times when we're really triggered by something, to figure out what's really going on there. For example, which inner voice or self or part was triggered and why? And we'll often find out that there are a few parts that have been triggered at the same time. For example, one of the very common things that we can see is that, for example, you become really, really angry. Okay? But then if you really check, then you'll discover very often that there was some kind of vulnerability underneath it. For example, it could even be that some driver cut you on the road and you became extremely angry at him or her. And then you understand that the underlying vulnerability was that you were extremely scared, or in other words, that a certain part of you was really, really afraid. But what came out was the anger. Okay, now, why is it so important to work on these things? Naturally, when we're triggered, all sorts of very interesting things happen, and not necessarily what we want, we really want. For example, somebody can say something very insulting to somebody they care for, or to somebody who would be hurt and not necessarily know what to do with it and how to react wisely to the situation. And things can be very can explode, or people separate after things like that. And we all know or we could have a car accident because we became very upset and angry, and so on and so forth. But much more than that, it's really that we are, to a certain degree, slaves of our automatic mechanisms that are simply, a button is pushed and there we go. And we have no free choice, and we have no peace there. And we have at that moment no ability to really be with whatever is going on and react accordingly, and not automatically. So, of course, that's another thing for the investigator to explore. Another thing I'd like to suggest is, we're all of us are filled to the brim with ideas and theories and belief systems, and all sorts of ideas, I think I said. And we very often don't notice that they are theories or belief systems. And it just feels like this is who I am, this is what I feel, this is the truth about myself, this is the truth about life, this is the truth about my husband, and so on and so forth. And what I would like to suggest for the sacred scientists and all the explorers and adventurers and spies within us to explore is things like, first of all, notice that these are theories and thoughts and ideas and beliefs. And then start to explore, where did they come from? No, where is this theory from? You know, so, and then you might discover all sorts of very interesting things. You might discover that it's something you heard when you were in first grade and never checked. Since then, it was just accepted as the truth. Or something, of course, that was taught by, you know, verbally or by example by your parents or in your family or anything of that kind. So it's really quite amazing when we start exploring that, and very, very freeing, because when we're trapped by all sorts of belief systems and all sorts of theories that, you know, sort of like viruses inhabit us, I would say, then we can really check them and see if they're really, first of all, if they're, you know, right or not, and if they're applicable, or perhaps they were more or less right for us when we were 17, but they're definitely not right for us now. And we really carry quite a lot of this stuff around. And one of the wonderful things in doing our inner work is becoming more and more clear of all these notions that live within us. And it doesn't necessarily mean throwing them completely away, because theories have their uses, you know. And if I'm not sort of buying into a theory, but exploring a theory, or, you know, checking it or using it for something, but I can also think about a different theory or a different point of view or different belief, then the situation is completely different. Okay, I maintain my freedom, I maintain my clarity, I don't become trapped inside my own traps and inside all sorts of traps that were somehow seeped into me from, you know, from other people or from society or from books I've read or from learning psychology at the university or whatever. Okay, so a good question, and of course this is a famous one, is this the truth? Okay, yeah, it is a really, really good question to ask. And the moment we add this, how would I say, kind of, it's a very useful and positive type of doubt, we become a bit freer to explore, a bit freer to be free in our thinking and in our reactions to things. And then we can also check all sorts of beliefs, of course. And also, not only is this the truth, but is this mine? Or did I just somehow, I don't know, it just came into me somehow and it just stayed there, and I'm just so used to it that it seems like the truth. So again, this is another good thing to try out. Just asking yourself, sitting down, possibly writing or drawing or whatever, or with a friend discussing it, and trying to figure out what actually you believe in and why, and where did it come from, and what do you believe in about yourself and about life. Okay. And when you do that, you start realizing that you may have thoughts and beliefs like, I can never be happy, okay? Or I'm bound to be poor, or all the good people are never rich, or, you know, all sorts of very, very odd things. When you shine the light on them, say, is this really the truth? Where did it come from? Who did I get this from? You know, and can I think about the opposite just for, you know, for balance sake? Can I find a voice within me, a part within me that can say the exact opposite? So I know from my own experience that I had plenty of these very defining beliefs that actually become almost like part of our identity. You know, a belief like I'll never find love becomes ingrained into a kind of identity which we really can't shake off. And as long as we can't shake it off or even turn it upside down, it's going to be really, really hard for us to find that love. So what I would do is really take a piece of paper or sit in front of the computer or whatever and start pouring out all sorts of beliefs that come up about myself, about what's possible for me, about what's possible for the world, for the country, what's possible for me to feel, you know, what relationships I could have. It's endless. And then I would start to figure out which part in me is saying that or is feeling that or has that belief. And I'll work with that part. And afterwards, of course, I will rush to find a part that I may never have even met before that thinks the exact opposite, feels the exact opposite, and has a very, very different belief system or theory about things. And then I would find myself much more in the aware I, free of these sticky beliefs and identities that usually really do nothing more than make us small, that make it very, very difficult to grow and to change. And I'm not even throwing them away. Sometimes it's good to throw away, not necessarily parts, but definitely all sorts of weird ideas and theories that live within us. But even if I don't, maybe I'm afraid to throw them away, maybe I'm not sure yet, but even if I only disidentify with them and understand where they've come from, I've already freed myself to some degree. If anybody wants to say anything, to comment, to ask, this is the time to raise your hand or give me some kind of signal. If not, we're going to end this show. And as usual, it's been a pleasure to be with you and to share my thoughts and my experiences with you. And we'll probably meet again next Monday. So thanks a lot and see you soon.